I was doing some prep for this show, as you know I probably should, and I was doing some reading from The Athletic, and I saw a piece put out that was titled "What the Cowboys Must Show Before the Playoffs."
See if I agree.
And there was a few different topics, and I want to see if we can build on these ourselves. The first thing, and if you have anything that you think the Cowboys must show heading into the playoffs that maybe we aren't thinking about, 877-881-1053. Let us know on the truckrick.com text line, on Twitch or YouTube. But the first thing was health. And I think, you know, you can say that about any team, right? Especially at this point in the year going into the postseason, as the team has already clinched a playoff spot. You know, you can ask the San Francisco 49ers, who they're holding their breath on Trent Williams. You can ask the Eagles. Jalen Hurts hasn't been healthy all season. He hasn't missed any games, but he hasn't been fully there. A.J. Brown, you saw get a little dinged up in that game against the 49ers. You've seen other teams across the NFC deal with these injuries to some key players like the Seattle Seahawks. Some of these teams have found a way to stay pretty healthy through the middle to the end of the season. And guess what? They're playing some of the best football in the NFC, like the LA Rams, like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who would have thought? They're playing some of the most consistent football right now. And for the Cowboys, you're missing probably your best, or at least your most respected run defender in Jonathan Hankins up the middle. And the Bills gashed the Cowboys on the ground the first week.
Gash is an understatement.
Yes, absolute understatement. And then without left tackle Tyron Smith this past weekend against the Miami Dolphins, Dak Prescott in the offense, it just seemed like it was really hard for the offense, and Mike McCarthy is included in that, to find a rhythm. It felt like when the offense was humming for the past few weeks, there was a lot of rhythm. There was a good sense of consistency. You don't get that when some of your best guys are down.
Yeah, battle of attrition. It's not how you start, it is how you finish. And like you just mentioned, some of those middle-of-the-pack teams have kind of risen out of nowhere. The Bucs, the Rams, and the Seahawks, teams that have gotten a little bit healthier as the season's gone on. And I've kind of been thinking about this phenomenon lately. Like, it happens in all pro sports, but not obviously wishing injury. But sometimes injuries are a good thing to happen to your team because it allows other guys to step up. And so when you come in those big moments, you can rely on your third, fourth string, whatever position they may be, and they have experience within the game. Because we obviously have had O-line troubles the last couple of years. So Chuma was able to come in. I'm not saying he was an all-pro left tackle last game. Obviously, he had his troubles. But he already had 6 or 7 starts on him. He's a lot more comfortable going out there than a guy it's his first time getting thrown out there. So hopefully our team can get healthy. Tyron and Zach, obviously Tyron not playing, Zach being banged up is not what you need, because as you saw, Alec, Dak's a different quarterback when that blitz and pressure, I wouldn't even say blitz, just when the pressure, when the pocket's collapsing, he's not as confident in the pocket, nor is honestly any quarterback in the league. So having a clean pocket's really important. And when you get those guys healthy, I think we look like a different offense. And I thought we cleaned up the run D without Hankins being there. Obviously, it could be better. It looked a lot better than it did from Buffalo to Miami. But yeah, there's still some problems that we need. Got to get healthy. Got to get Tyron back. Got to get Hankins back in that middle. Need the big boys.
I think my favorite text that I got in the game versus the Miami Dolphins, and Luka just made a pass behind his head.
He does this
to Seth Curry, and he drained an open 3. That was kind of ridiculous. I'm sorry. I just had to take a moment to give that its real-time appreciation.
So what happens when you watch Luka? It's hard to realize this guy's human.
That man is just dumb good.
I haven't even checked the box score. I know he has 20.
I think my favorite text that I got during that game between the Cowboys and the Dolphins from a friend was, yeah, I'm about to call the police on Chuma Edoga. Yeah. And because
that one play was egregious.
I know which one you're talking about, where they had a 3-on-3 look on the left side, and he just completely let Bradley Chubb blow right past him.
It was like the last second, too. He was like acting like he was going to block him. He got close. He said, nah, I'm going to go double team.
It would make sense if he had an inline tight end right next to him, but guess what? There was nobody within 10 yards of him. And for some reason, he felt like he needed to help pick up that blitz that was already accounted for by Tyler Smith and Tyler Biadasz. There was actually a second play just like that later in the game that nobody really talked about, because we were all just kind of focused on score, and nobody was saying, hey, let's see how that left tackle's playing. You know, it was rough, but the silver lining out of all of that is it's not any serious injuries. We've had some bad luck the past few years with a couple guys going down with more serious types of injuries. And, I mean, you had your one big one at the beginning of the year with Trayvon Diggs. But outside of that, Leighton Vander Esch as well. When you got to the, DeMarvion Overshown, which, I mean, we had a lot of hope for, but we hadn't seen anything yet.
It was no guarantee,
Yeah, so, from the key contributors that we knew of that had skins on the wall.
Known quantities,
Yeah, we kind of got lucky for the most part outside of those two guys on defense. The next thing that the Athletic put together was run defense, and I think that's pretty obvious because of the Jonathan Hankins injury right after that we mentioned it. The Bills absolutely gashing the team for, it felt like, all of the rushing yards. It was well over 250. Not great, but of the other 6 teams currently in the NFC playoff picture, 4 are in the top 10 in rushing offense, and that includes the likes of the 49ers and the Eagles, and even the LA Rams rounding that out at number 10. So run defense is going to be a huge thing, and look, you mentioned the LA Rams. They are a great prove it, if you will, that rushing offenses can definitely win in the postseason, because remember a couple of years ago when a dude named CJ ran all over the Cowboys defense right off the couch? He was basically like a human bowling ball. Yeah, he hadn't played in a while, just right off the couch, and it kind of worked. Shout out Joe Flacco doing the exact same thing over there for the Cleveland Browns. But run defense is going to be something that is obviously going to be pivotal going forward, and you hope that it will get better, one, just through coaching and a heightened sense of awareness in my mind, but you're going to get Jonathan Hankins back here in the next few weeks. Don't really know exactly when. We haven't gotten a clear-cut update on that. But whenever he comes back, and I don't think many people are going to give the Cowboys their flowers for it. Obviously, they lost against the Dolphins, and ultimately, the defense just needed one stop at the end of the game, and that field goal isn't getting kicked. That's all they needed. But for 3 quarters, it felt like that run defense was shored up at least a little bit. It felt like they set the edge pretty well.
I was literally clapping my hands back and forth. I was like, because I was hitting the table the whole week like, hey, we could lose this game. Obviously, I want to win it. But if our run defense looks better, I'll feel a lot happier. Now, obviously, I said that, and I thought I'd feel okay. I still didn't feel great because I was like, maybe if they just torch us with Tyreek, it is what it is. But we actually outrushed the Dolphins. 97 yards for us, 91 for the Dolphins. Even the eye test and kind of watching the film back, it felt like we were playing some good run defense. The safeties were coming down. We were playing really well vertically. We had a lot of plays stopped at the line of scrimmage or behind. Obviously, they're going to get some carries here or there. That's part of when you run the ball with the fast guys that they got. But we also saw Micah Parsons play a little bit of off ball, which was obviously a big talking point the last week. So I thought all in all, the run defense was okay. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, we're the Ravens or Niners or anything all of a sudden, but it was definitely an improvement from what we saw in Buffalo, and hopefully it's a thing that can keep getting better. I think it was more of a scheme thing and guys buying in. Obviously, we didn't get anybody new on that defense, so it wasn't like a talent. Like, they know how to tackle, they know how to read the hole. It's just doing it, trusting your eyes, understanding the scheme, and it seemed like those guys bought in that week. But it feels like with the Cowboys, once one thing is fixed, another wound is open. We stopped the run defense, and all of a sudden, I'm not saying the Dolphins were necessarily going crazy in the pass game, but it felt like for a good amount of that game, they kind of got whatever they wanted. They were just like, oh, we'll throw it here, we'll pick up 10 here, we'll pick up 5 here. It wasn't much resistance in the pass game.
Yeah, and hopefully you can find a little bit of rebuttal here when you host the Detroit Lions on Saturday, because that's an offense that is still really, really good, especially in the rushing department, but I feel like they're not as potent in the pass game as they were at the beginning of the year.
Correct.
You're starting to see Jared Goff make some of those throws that you saw back in LA again, but that's still a really good offense. I'm not discrediting them. I'm just hoping that if you can stop the run, you can at least force Goff into uncomfortable positions.
And that's in the Cowboys' favor.
Yeah, and that's absolutely in their favor, and I think that's kind of the key to winning any football game in the NFL. So it's not anything against Jared Goff or the Lions. It's just saying, look, if you can get home with 4 and you can keep the rushing offense of Jahmyr Gibbs and company in check, then you might have a chance in this one against a really high-powered offense. But the next topic here of things the Cowboys must show before the playoffs, penalties. And the Cowboys have the second most penalties in the league now.
We're second now.
Yes.
Let's go. We're not first.
With 108. You know who's in first now?
Seahawks? They were like third or something.
The New York Jets.
The Jets, okay.
They have surpassed the Cowboys by 3.
Let's go. That's a win right there, guys. We're not first in penalties anymore.
Yeah, the Cowboys are second in NFL in defensive holdings with 11, but some of those you could just say playing aggressive, which I feel like under Dan Quinn, I've really appreciated the aggressive defense that they played, especially on the outsides. You're seeing a lot of aggressive action from the corners and from the secondary, but the officials, far from perfect. Absolutely far from perfect. And we'll hear from Micah Parsons here in a little bit about what he had to say about the lack thereof in terms of the calls that benefit him. But there does need to be a little more accountability from the team for that lack of discipline. And I don't know where it starts, because you can talk about things like, you extend drives defensively a lot by jumping off sides or, an unnecessary face mask grab, whatever it may be. There needs to be a little bit more accountability in my mind from the top down, because that does feel like a coaching first thing. And then you start pointing at the players when it's like, okay, it's been a month and a half. Why are you guys still committing these fouls?
And see, it's not just the number of fouls. It's when they occur. Does it not feel like they're always back-breaking penalties? Like it's, we finally stop a really good offense on third down, and it's 3rd and 15. They throw up some jumbo, and then we get a late hit, or we get a personal foul, or there's a guy holding 20 yards away from the ball. Like, I understand if it's PI and you're going one-on-one and it's a jump ball, it's going to happen. But I feel like a lot of them are boneheaded penalties. So that's on like coaching and discipline and understanding who you're playing with and the guys you have out there and being able to be disciplined in those big moments, because they've cost us points. They haven't just been ticky-tack ones. They've literally cost us 7, 3, 10, 14, whatever, like momentum, especially in that Bills game. I'm not saying I agree with all the calls, but you don't want to put yourself in that situation where calls like that can fluctuate the game.
And you know what's really weird? I don't know if I'm alone on this hill, but to me, at very minimum, it felt like through the first month, even maybe bleeding into the second month of the season, it didn't feel like this was exactly a major issue.
Yeah.
Like, I was giving McCarthy his props for saying, look, the fundamentals are fully there. And at that point, it felt like the offense didn't have their rhythm yet. That was my big knock. Now it's the complete opposite. It feels like the offense has figured out their identity and how to find a rhythm, excluding the last 2 weeks. But now it's like we're reverting back to old ways. Old habits die hard. We say it all the time, and the penalties are starting to rear their ugly head. I hate it at this time of the year.
It's because we're not winning, man. At the beginning, the offense, like you said, wasn't really much to count on. We were beating teams 40-0, 35-0 defense with multiple takeaways every week. Start playing these higher potent offenses. There's more film on you. Next thing you know, the defense starts to come back to the mean. Obviously, the offense has excelled since then and taken off and been able to kind of keep us above ground. But like, back to what I said a couple of seconds ago, when one thing starts to falter, another thing pops up. It hasn't seemed like we've put together multiple weeks against good teams where offense is good, defense is good, special teams. We've had a couple with some middling teams, but seems like now that the defense is slipping or defense is playing well in the last against Miami, offense can't pull it together. Obviously in Buffalo, neither of those happened, but we need to put together in this Lions game, we need to have all of that together.
The fourth and final thing the Cowboys must show before the playoffs is a plan offensively for the run game. And it's not exactly like I heard on Cowboys Crosstalk, someone drop, hey, give Tony Pollard 20 carries a game. It's not exactly that. It's more so just saying you need to figure out a plan for this come playoff time, because what were we just talking about with the run defense? In the playoffs, usually a good rushing attack works just because you can play off of that. And that's fundamental football. That's complementary football at its core. And that's something that Mike McCarthy, ever since he first landed in Dallas, he's always preached that complementary football. But what does it look like? Do you have a 1-2 punch where it's a bit more even split between Rico Dowdle and Tony Pollard? They did that for a stretch. It felt like in the middle of the season where there was a bit more balanced of an attack. Is it a combination of more guys that play receiver getting touches in the backfield?
CD's been doing that a couple times now.
You've seen CD doing it quite a bit now. Brandon Cooks on end arounds, Kevontae Turpin just the same. Hunter Lipke even carried the ball.
Don't say that name. Don't say that.
Look,
don't give me nightmares.
That was just one of those things. I'm not knocking the fullback. That felt like one of those things that it was working until it didn't.
No, I'm definitely just being overly emotional about that, because everyone at the station and the fans were, give Hunter Lipke the ball. He's their fullback for these short yardage. And it literally worked earlier in the drive.
Yeah, it worked 3 times in that same drive.
Not even like early in the season, literally in that drive. And it's just, undrafted guy, big situation, just didn't take the handoff. I'm sure he'll get another opportunity, but yeah, happens.
It happens, and the Cowboys are a decent running team, and it doesn't really feel like it. They do rank number 12 in the NFL in yards per game and 15th in yards per rush. So the numbers would prove it. It's just the eye test. You don't feel like you're getting that pop that you got a couple years ago with the Zeke, Tony Pollard experience when Zeke was still on the healthier side of things. It doesn't feel like we're getting that anymore. And look, it's because you don't have 2 marquee names. It's nothing against Rico Dowdle. It's just the fact that Rico Dowdle has had his own injury issues, to which he didn't even practice today with an ankle injury.
It's like the last couple of weeks. We've had him questionable DNP. So it's been when we had Rico at full strength, it felt like we had a strong 1-2 punch. And now that Tony's kind of getting his legs under him, Rico's kind of like on the injury report. So hopefully at some point, maybe playoffs, we can have both those guys at full strength.
That would be nice, and it seems like Tony Pollard is starting to feel like himself a little bit more. And he was telling the media earlier in the week and last week saying, look, I'm just now kind of getting back to form after that nasty ankle injury in the postseason. You think about how close that is up, to training camp and to the beginning of the regular season. He's just now starting to feel fresh. And when you have a guy that has fresh legs at this point in the season, that's a great thing. Look at what Aaron Jones did this past weekend.
Also, you can't say that name. That's fantasy football legend let down.
I mean,
2 years in a row.
I had him on my team, so I can't. I'm right there with you. But no, like what he was able to do, because he just looks like he has a high motor. And the first game that he was starting to say, like, I feel good again. I feel like myself. He goes out there and rushes for over 100.
Yeah, with running backs, it's all about attrition and legs. I mean, that's why we always see usually the top couple rushers, the best seasons are in your first 4 or 5 years. It's usually not on that second or third contract. It's tough that we see guys later. Raheem Mostert is definitely a what's it called? A diamond. Doesn't happen often when you're late in your career and all of a sudden you're leading the league.
Yeah, diamond in the rough for sure.
Rushing touchdowns. So being able to have fresh legs this late in the season will be important. And we're going against probably the best 1-2 punch in the league this upcoming week against the Lions.